I know in security and intelligence, the history can be really shrouded in mystery because we imagine all these top secret documents just sitting in a basement somewhere and, we can't get access to them because they're going to be completely redacted. And although that's absolutely true, like if you want to find out about what happened in operations like 5 years ago, good luck. That's not always the case. Sometimes the mystery is far more mundane. So, hi, this is my deep dive, my final deep dive into Camp X, the super secret spy slash special ops training school that was built on the shores of Lake Ontario by the British during World War II. And I got really curious about what happened to Camp X. Like, why is it such a mystery? It's so hard to find good information on this place. And here's why. So, in 1944, after the successful Allied invasion of Normandy, they didn't need the spy school anymore. They didn't need to parachute people in. So that part of the camp got shut down. The signals in part continued for a couple decades, but even that, it disappeared. And all of those buildings on the shores of Lake Ontario were destroyed. A lot of them were just shoved into Lake Ontario. Somebody mentioned that their foundations were filled in. There's no real physical record anymore of these buildings. They're all gone. Although I have been told that there are times during particularly vicious thunderstorms when pieces of Camp X will wash up from Lake Ontario onto the beach. How cool. Anyways, but the records, they shouldn't have gone anywhere. But here's like the craziest story about all the records of Camp X. So just a little bit of context first. It was a British installation, like I said. I think, from what I can tell, it was run by the Special Operations Executive. But there was another layer of bureaucracy in there. It was an organization called the BSC. It was run by this Canadian guy, William Stevenson. It was headquartered in New York, and it was essentially, basically responsible for all British spy-related activity in the Americas, from the tip of North America down to the tip of South America. So, as I mentioned before, the Germans bought a lot of their raw materials from South America. So the Allies had a lot of spies and special agents down in South America trying to get more information about German activity and capabilities and all that stuff. But the BSC also worked with the developing intelligence organizations in Canada and the US, like the OSS, the RCMP up here. And so Camp X technically was under the purview of this BSC and this guy, William Stevenson. So here was this big plan, okay? After the war, he gets 10 to 12 of the best writers in his organization, including, randomly, children's writer Roald Dahl. And they get access to all the records on Camp X, I'm assuming other records for the BSC, and they put together what I'm going to call this artifact. It was called the BSC Bible, and it was a record of all the BSC activities during the war. They put it together, and in the dead of night, after it's done, they print 10 copies. They're immediately classified top secret, and they get whisked away to wherever they go. So then they've got all these paper records, right? It's mid-40s, paper records everywhere. What do these people do? They decide to have a bonfire, and they burn them all. So when I first read this, I was devastated because I'm like, oh my gosh, how cool. That's like so much cool history just literally gone up in flames. And it's funny because, as a side note, the government of Canada now takes information management really seriously. If it's for the historical record, you're supposed to save it, to the extent that when I used to work in the government, like, you get regular briefings on information management. You'd get this email prompt that would be like, do you need to save this? Is it relevant to the historical record? You'd be like, oh my gosh, I don't know. But you know what I do know? The Camp X records would have been very relevant to the historical record, and they just burned them. You can tell I'm a little bit upset about that. Anyway, so that's it. I think that's why it's so hard to find good information on Camp X, because all the files went up in flames. So I did a little bit of digging to try to see if I could get one of these BSC Bibles, like a copy of it or a digital copy of it. And I looked in the Library and Archives Canada system, which I'm getting more familiar with, nothing there. I checked old ATIP requests, if anything had been, if it had been released. I couldn't find it. So I did do an ATIP request to say, hey, is one of these 10 volumes available for study? But I did come across something really interesting when I was looking for the BSC Bible, which was that there was this report on the RCMP security services done in 1973. And it was everything from when they were the Northwestern Mounted Police right through to the 70s. And so I immediately went to the section on World War II and its aftermath, thinking, oh, okay, they're going to have some reference in here to Camp X and the BSC, and maybe there's a source and I can dig that way. So I go into that section and I get to the paragraph that I know is about Camp X. It doesn't say Camp X, but it's like Stevenson, Oshawa training. I'm like, this is it. I have found the section. I turn the page and it is all redacted. Pages and pages of redaction. They redacted everything on Camp X. So I couldn't find out any more that way. Hopefully my ATIP thing comes through. I will say about that redaction, why I don't think it's suspicious is because I think it might be a territorial issue here. See, like I said, Camp X was technically owned by the British, and I don't think Canada can make decisions about whether or not to redact information on Camp X. I think it might be a British decision because it was technically their program, which may be why we're still redacting things in 2019 about Camp X, because they just can't sort out that bureaucratic connection to get us to declassify those records. I really hope they do. I'm sure they're really interesting. Hopefully this Bible shows up. If not, that's the end of the story on Camp X for now. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, anything you want me to look at in the future, let me know. Otherwise, as always, hope everyone's managing to do pretty good today.